So if we ask the question whether work should be meaningful, I think there's a trivial sense in which all work is meaningful in the sense that we're doing it for some reason. Now, often those reasons within the context of modern employment is that we're getting a paycheck. So all paid employment is meaningful in that sense. I think the larger question that we discussed today is, are there deeper senses of meaning that transcend just the monetary remuneration? And that's where it seems to me there's a lot of virtues to meaningful work and a lot of opportunities perhaps to encourage it in ways that we don't currently do. Two of the biggest insights I took away from today's discussion were made by Mike Pratt, who said, look, on the one hand, we can think about ways of selecting workers that are highly motivated and committed to some project, committed to some goal, committed to some activity, whether it be a nonprofit or for-profit firm. And identifying those people at the very selection and identifying those people when you're hiring them can be an important thing for organizations to think about. His example of firefighters are really compelling on that front. On the other hand, there are things that businesses and other organizations can do internally with the people they already have to make work more meaningful. And that can include both the enrichment that Mike talked about, having tasks that are more complex, more interesting, making clear to workers the importance of what they're doing. But it also seems to me that there's a role that the workers themselves have to play in taking initiative and asking, to what sense is, taking initiative and asking, in what sense is what I'm doing contributing something important? And if it's not, is there something I can do to make my work more important? So from my perspective, I think there's a role that employees can play and a role that employers can play in mapping out and articulating more meaningful work. This seems to me an important project for bringing out the best in people beyond what just a paycheck elicits.
Organizations are increasingly discovering that meaningful work is important for them because it increases employees' job satisfaction, job engagement, their motivation, their physiological health, as well as it builds trust in organizations. Organizations can do several things to increase the meaningfulness of work. They can change the job itself by increasing the number of tasks that people do, the number of types of things people do, the significance, telling people about how significant their jobs are, helping them with doing more complete tasks, giving them feedback and giving them autonomy. We also find in relational job design is having people connect with their beneficiaries is meaningful, and even people themselves can craft their own jobs. But beyond that, we can also help people find more value in what they do and give them reasons for actually working. People come to work with at least one of 6 orientations. I work because I get a paycheck. I work because it gives me status. I work because it provides me a sense of family. I work because it is some greater good. Or I work because I'm a craftsperson. I really want to make the best thing, whatever that is, whatever job or service, I want it the best it can be. Depending on someone's orientation, organizations have to tailor their meaningful enrichment processes differently. So if I have a craftsmanship orientation, organizations can create apprenticeships. If I am very much into service, CSR, and allowing people opportunities to provide good outside the organization. So if I had to leave a final thought for what organizations can do is to focus on 2 things. One, make sure to focus on the work itself, make sure the work itself is enriching. And the second thing is focus on the meaning. Figure out why people are working, what their orientation towards work is, and then help them find that meaning within their job.
Meaningful work is extremely important because it is related to the sense of mission every person has and to the pursuit of happiness. So actually, if you make the calculus, we spend about 40% of our lives working. So if we don't find happiness at work, then we're missing 40% of our happiness. And that's why meaningfulness is finding the meaningfulness, finding meaning in what we do is extremely important. How do we put that into practice? I think that we have to find a way of working with, and actually, let me put it this way. I think that employers and managers have a moral responsibility to help employees to find meaningfulness, as it is related to the sense of mission and to their pursuit of happiness. How can a manager succeed in this task? By helping the employees to put all their expertise they have in the job they do, then obviously to work ethically and to work with enthusiasm. The three things: expertise, ethics, and enthusiasm. Eventually, if we want to be even more practical, what I would do is to foster empowerment to my employees and also to foster a culture and an atmosphere of trust. Trust and empowerment lead to higher commitments and eventually through this to a higher sense of communion between the people who work in that working community. And these eventually will help us to find meaningfulness at work.
I look at the issue of meaningful work through the lens of dignity. And I think it would be fair to say that people who find their work meaningful derive a sense of dignity from that work. At the same time, I know that there are circumstances when people have meaningful work. Let's say they're doing some kind of job that's promoting the greater good or that's contributing something really positive to the community. And let's say they're working for an organization that is well known for working on these topics of the greater good. And yet, if the organization internally doesn't honor the dignity of the people who are working there, it's, it can make for a very dysfunctional situation. So for example, if people are not sure about their own dignity and they're not treating other people with dignity in the organization, and yet they are still doing meaningful work, there's going to be problems. So meaningful work, I don't think, is enough in a dignity sense. It's not enough to keep people going and to make people feel happy with their job or fulfilled in their job. Their job also, the conditions and the culture in the organization has to be a culture in which they're extending dignity to one another and people feel that their dignity is intact. And the other thing about dignity and meaningfulness is also this other factor of trust. If people are in an organization where they're being treated well, and they have a meaningful purpose to their work, then they're going to be very trusting in that organization. So all these topics are related: trust and dignity and meaningfulness. And so the opposite is also true. Even if you have a wonderful, greater purpose and meaning in your work, if dignity breaks down, either in terms of your own dignity or the way you're treating other people, trust is the first thing to go. So I see these things tied together, that in some ways you can't have meaningful work without dignity, and at the same time, you can't have dignity without meaningful work.
In a discussion about meaningful work, it seems to me important to find out what work means for people. So work doesn't define the worker. The worker kind of defines the work and his relationship, or his or her relationship to it. That's number one. Number two, the worker is doing something in conjunction with the other people that he or she is joined to. And so there's a kind of a team effort or a group effort in terms of what they may be doing if they work in a large organization. And thirdly, they have a sense of having accomplished something, a kind of a transcendence of self, that they have done something that moves beyond their own self-interest. And moving beyond your own self-interest kind of creates in you a kind of sense of yourself that's kind of elevated, kind of not necessarily more important, but it kind of touches you more deeply and makes you more human. In terms of what organizations have to do, the organizations first and foremost have to create an environment in which people know that there's the possibility that they'll have meaningful work. And secondly, that they find in the organization a high sense of value as to not just what they do, but what they in their person brings to the whole enterprise. And so it seems to me if these two things are working together, you don't necessarily have accomplished all you want, but you've at least created the conditions where work can in fact be meaningful.
today we had a wonderful conversation, a colloquium here, and I'll just try to say one more thing, which is when we're talking about work and meaningful work, I guess that every work has to be meaningful and can be meaningful. May it be the mother taking care of children or the father taking care of children at home, that's a work. It's not to be a professional job, but it's still a work. So every human action that is for the purpose or service of helping and contributing to someone else is a work. And in that sense, the issue we were dealing with here today was basically, is this human? So I could say that the more meaningful is the work, the more human it is. Or the more human it is, the higher purpose or meaning we should give to this. And for that reason, it's not just a task that comes from the managers. It's a task that comes from each one doing the work itself. So you may have a really bad manager, you may have a really awful environment, but you can do the best of your work, and your every daily work hour, you can do your best, because you can take advantage of any work or job to do that. And well, what can companies do? I would say just summarize in 3 P's if you want. First, purpose, and everybody was talking about purpose today, which means we need to have a clear purpose of what is my work about and what the added value I'm adding here. So the company and the manager and the entire organization should make this clear. There should be a clear fitting or alignment between the personal purpose and the purpose of the organization. Then perfection of the work itself. So purpose, perfection. We try to do the work as best as we can. I mean, it's not just doing the work itself, it's doing our best during the task. And finally, that should be in an environment of passion, 3P, which is, okay, once you have a clear purpose, you're trying to do your best, put all your heart when you're doing, and that's the summary of everything, I guess, we were talking about love in the workplace. Because caring or loving your work and people around and society means I really care, so I'll put the best of me to get the best from me, to give it to the entire society and get the best of people around me. So that's the contribution and to the common good. So contribution and creation and cooperation, the 3 things work together in a good work, wherever it is. Small task, great task.